Major, huge thing for your quiz on Wednesday. You will have a time limit, okay? You will have to submit your work with your quiz, not email it to me when you're done. You also really need to check your answers because some will work and some will not. So if I look at something like number 1, this is an equation. You're going to come out with x equals. But we want to get our absolute value completely by itself. So when I do that, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 7 from both sides. So I get negative absolute value of 2x minus 5 equals 20. Now what? Divide both sides by negative 1. Good. So I have the absolute value of 2x minus 5 equals negative 20. Now that my absolute value is by itself, I separate into two different equations. 2x minus 5 equals negative 20. 2x minus 5 equals positive 20. And now we just solve. Add 5 to both sides. So 2x equals negative 15. Divide by 2. And you get x equals negative 15 over 2. Okay, that's my first answer. My second answer, I'm going to find same thing. Add 5 to both sides. 2x equals 25. Divide both sides by 2. And I get x equals 25 over 2. Now, some of you will just move on and say, okay, I got 2 answers, we're good. But you really need to go back and check just to make sure. So when I do that, when I plug back in, you guys don't have to do a big, long, formal check, but you need to plug back in just to make sure that answers work. So if I plug back in, first of all, negative 15 over 2. When I do this, inside here, my 2's cancel out, right? So I'm left with negative 15 minus 5. That would be 7 minus the absolute value of 20 equals 27. Some of you will make a mistake right here and go, oh, look, 2 negatives. Okay, look, we'll give you 2 negatives gives you a positive, and you'll say 7 plus 20 is 27. Is that what that line in green says? No. That says 7 minus, what's the absolute value of negative 20? 20. And 7 minus 20 is negative 13. Whoa. Not 113. It's negative 13. Does negative 13 equal 27? No. So is this an answer? No. Same thing with the other one. You got to check. Check 25 over 2. I have 7 minus 2 times 25 over 2 minus 5. Absolute value. Does that equal 27? Well, here my 2's will cancel out. 20 minus 5. So I have 7 minus the absolute value of 20 equals 27. The absolute value of 20 is 20. So 7 minus 20 equals 27. That is not true. So this answer does not work. So your answer for number 1 is what? No solution. Guys, if you have a question like this and it works out to be no solution and it's worth 20 points, I'm going to take off at least 10 that you don't go back and check, because there's a big difference in telling me those two numbers work than going back and not checking. Yes, ma'am.
When you get to the absolute value of 2x minus 5 is equal to negative 20, can you just stop there?
Yeah. Yes. The question was, when you get to like this line right here, can you just stop? Yes, because you guys are showing me that you understand. Oh, wait, when I plug that back in, it doesn't work. Yeah, good question. All right, let's look at number 2. Guys, your number 2 I think is different from mine, so people at home, number 2, make it a positive 2 if it's not already. So we want our absolute value to be solo. So divide both sides by 2. Get the absolute value of 5x minus 1 equals 2. Now that it's by itself, you can separate it. 2x minus 1 equals 2. Sorry, 5x. 5x minus 1 equals negative 2. So if I solve, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. 5x equals 3. Divide by 5. And x equals 3/5. Add 1 to both sides. 5x equals negative 1. Divide by 5. And x equals negative 1/5. Now, before you just circle them and say, okay, I'm good to go, let's check. Scoot over here. Absolute value of 5 times 3 over 5 minus 1. Does that give me 4? My 5's cancel out, right? What's 3 minus 1? 3 minus 1. 2. So I have 2 times the absolute value of 2. Does that equal 4? Is that true? Yes, that's a true statement. So 3/5 works. Good. Now, check the second one. Mr. Yurko, you check yourself before you what?
Wreck yourself.
There you go.
Come on, y'all.
So I'm going to plug in, I'm going to plug in negative 1/5 here. Minus 1, does that equal 4? What happens to my 5s? They cancel out. What is negative 1 minus 1? Negative 1 minus 1? Negative 2. Does 2 times the absolute value of negative 2 equal 4? Yes. So in this case, guys, when you plug your two answers back in, they both work. But don't take for granted that they will all just work. You need to go back and check. All right, I can guarantee you on every single version, and there's about 8 different versions, you guys will have something that's ugly like this with fractions. All right, the process is the same, but we have to be able to work with fractions. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 5 from both sides. So I have the absolute value of 2/3 x plus 1/2 equals 8. My absolute value is alone, so now I can split this up into 2 different equations. Remember, when we split them up, you change the sign of the answer. You have one that's positive, one that's negative. So I have 2/3 x plus 1/2 equals negative 8. So if I'm going to solve this equation on the left, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 1/2 from both sides. Guys, if I subtract 1/2, I have to change 8 over 1, right? This is 8 over 1, into halves. 8 over 1 is how many halves?
8 of 1 is
Mm-hmm.
4. Or 2.
4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. What would have to be in the numerator in order to make it a whole number 8? What divided by 2 gives me 8? 16. If I multiply the bottom by 2 here, I'd multiply the top. So I have 16 over 2 minus 1 over 2. That's what the new question's asking. So 2/3 x equals, what's 16 over 2 minus 1 over 2? 15, good, over 2. Now if I want to solve this, I have to get rid of the 2/3. I would divide by 2/3, which is the same thing as multiplying by 3 over 2. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So x equals 45 over 4. We're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to subtract 1/2. Subtract 1/2. So this becomes 2/3 x. Well, what did we just say 8 was? 16 over 2, right? So it's negative 16 over 2 minus 1/2. What's negative 16 and a negative 1? Good, negative 17 over 2. So if I'm going to divide by 2/3, it's the same as multiplying by 3 over 2. So I get x equals negative 17 times 3 is negative 51. You didn't do that in your head. You just go over to the side here, say 17 times 3, you get 51. And then 2 times 2 is 4. Before you move on and pat yourself on the back and say you got it right, you need to check to make sure. So I'm going to go right here. Doesn't have to be anything major. Just 2/3 times, the first one we got was 45 over 4, right? Plus 1/2. Does that give me 13? So 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 2 times, 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 45, how many times? 15? Okay, so I have 5 plus the absolute value. What's 15 over 2 plus 1 over 2? What's 15 over 2 plus 1 over 2? 16 over 2 equals 13. What's 16 over 2? 8. What's 5 plus 8? Does 13 equal 13?
Yeah.
Yes, so this is a correct answer. So 45 over 4 works. Same thing, we're going to check negative 51 over 4. So I have 5 plus 2/3 times negative 51 over 4 plus 1/2. Does that equal 13? Okay, well, cross cancel. 2 goes into 2 once. 2 goes into 2, 2 goes into 4 2 times. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into negative 51, negative 17 times. What's negative 17 plus 1? Yep, so I have 5 plus the absolute value of negative 16 over 2. Does that equal 13? What's negative 16 divided by negative 2? Yep, so it's 5 plus the absolute value of negative 8. Does that give you 13? Yes. So this is also a correct answer. A lot of work, I understand that, but you guys have to go back and check because I guarantee you there'll be some no solutions on your quiz. All right, looking at number 4. Does your number 4 look like my number 4? If not, make it look like it. First thing I'm going to do is I see this as an inequality, so it's not an equals. I'm going to write down some little notes about my inequality. What do I know? It's an or, and it says greater than or equal to. So when I graph, I'm going to close my dots. I'm going to go in opposite directions. So if we want to get our absolute value all by itself, the first thing we need to do is subtract 3 from both sides. So 2 times the absolute value of 4x minus 1 greater than or equal to 6. Divide both sides by 2. You get 4x minus 1 absolute value greater than or equal to 3. So now we're going to rewrite into two inequalities. 4x minus 1 is greater than or equal to 3. And 4x minus 1 is less than or equal to negative 3. When we have inequalities, that's when we have to flip the sign of the inequality and the sign of the answer. Okay, so let's solve. We're going to add 1 to both sides. 4x is greater than or equal to 4. Divide both sides by 4, and you get x is greater than or equal to 1. Over here, same thing, we're going to add 4. Just kidding, we're going to add 1. 4x is less than or equal to negative 2. Divide both sides by 4, and x is less than or equal to negative 1/2. That's not our answer. I need interval notation of an answer. So let's make a quick little number line. Negative 1/2, 0, and 1. I have closed dots at both of these places. And since it was gray tor at the end, we're going to shade in opposite directions. So now we need to check to make sure. If I plug in 0 right here, should 0 satisfy my inequality? No, because I didn't color on it. Good. So when I look back at the original, if I said 2 times the absolute value of 4 times 0 minus 1 plus 3, is that greater than or equal to 9? Well, 4 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 1. So I have 2 times the absolute value of negative 1 plus 3. Is that greater than or equal to 9? 2 times 1 is 2 plus 3 is 5. Is 5 greater than or equal to negative 9? People at home, 5 greater than or equal to negative 9? No, it's not. So I am correct in my graphing that 0 is not included. So my interval notation, my answer here would be negative infinity to negative 1/2 bracket union 1 to infinity. This is the answer that I am going to be looking for. I'm not looking at your graph. I need to know what the interval is that will satisfy this inequality. Questions so far? Everybody's okay? Okay, let's go to the next one then. I need my absolute value completely by itself. So in order to do that, I have to multiply the numerator by 2x minus 6, absolute value, and the denominator and the other side, 2x minus 6. My numerator and denominator will cancel out, so I have 10 is less than 5 times the absolute value of 2x minus 6. I need absolute value by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by what? Good. Divide by 5. Now, I'm going to rewrite this as the absolute value of 2x minus 6 is greater than 2. I flipped the sign, yes, but because I flipped the absolute value to the other side. So now I can write my two inequalities. 2x minus 6 is greater than 2. 2x minus 6 is less than negative 2. You flip the inequality sign and the sign of the answer. So in this case, on the left-hand side, we're going to add 6. So I get 2x is greater than 8. Divide both sides by 2. And I get x is greater than 4. Over here, same thing. We're going to add 6. So 2x is less than 4, right? Divide by 2. And I get x is less than 2. So 0, 2, and 4. What kind of dots do I have at 2 and 4? Open or close? Open. Good. Both of them are open. I want x is greater than 4. That would be the numbers this way. And I want x is less than 2, so it's the numbers this way. So again, guys, if I plug in 0, should my inequality be true if I plug in 0? Did I color over 0? Yes, I did. So it should work. So when I plug in 0 up here, 0 times 2 is just 0. So 0 minus 6. Is the absolute value of negative 6 greater than 2? Yes. So we are correct. So how would I write my interval notation? Somebody at home. Somebody at home. Somebody at home. Kennedy. Hannah Mendez.
Hi.
Hi. Right, that's right. My interval notation.
Parentheses.
Perfect.
Infinity.
Negative infinity to
2.
parentheses.
Union. And parentheses 4, comma, infinity.
Perfect. Good job. Thank you, ma'am. Questions? All right, let's pay attention to these last two because every single version will have a question like this. And I'll explain why we shade where we do once we're done with it. Hang on. Your directions say to solve algebraically and graphically. Everything we've done so far has been algebraic, so you guys know how to do this. This is a quadratic, so you want to get everything to one side. And we're going to find our critical points that we put on our number line and see if we can shade, or which way we shade. So I have 3x squared plus 13x minus 10 equals 0. This is how we figure that out. 3 times negative 10. Since a is not 1, I multiply a times c. So what are the factors of negative 30, guys, that multiply to give me negative 30 but add to give me positive 13? You are correct. Positive 15 and negative 2. Your a term is not 1. So we're going to put a underneath both of these. So I get x plus 5 and I get 3x minus 2. Both of those equal 0. She just texted me. Thank you. Can you tell? All right, so I have my x's would be x equals negative 5 and x equals positive 2/3. Does anyone have any questions about how I got those two numbers? All right, so on my number line, because I'm still I need to write out my interval notation. What kind of dots do I have at negative 5 and positive 2/3? Both closed, good. I started off with gray tor. So which way am I going to color? Opposite. Again, if you want to check, make sure that you're correct. Plug in 0. Should 0 work when I plug it in? No, because I didn't color over it. So look, when I plug in 0 here, this becomes 0, this becomes 0. Is this statement negative 10 is greater than or equal to 0? Is that true?
If you have writing, it doesn't let you write under it.
I'm trying to do my video and it's just like, hey. It's okay. We're almost done. All right, so I have negative infinity to negative 5 bracket, union, bracket, 2/3 to infinity. That is your algebraic answer. You are going to write that answer where it says algebraic answer in interval notation. Then the second thing you're going to do is graph this. So we've already found where our intercepts were. Our intercepts are here and here at -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, -5, and at positive 2/3. Now guys, we talked about a parabola. Makes the shape of a U. This is a positive parabola because it starts off with positive 3x squared. So I need to see the shape, that it goes in the correct direction, and that it's going upwards through the intercepts. Now, when you talk about shading, where this matters, guys, this graph, when I started off, my inequality says 3x squared plus 3x minus 10 is greater than or equal to 0. So you would color, you would tell me that the part of the graph that matters is the top part, above the x-axis. When it's greater than, you shade above the x-axis. So somehow, when you graph this, you need to tell me, hey, this is the part I'm talking about. I'll explain to you why that is graphically in a second. Let's look at the other one. Pay attention to this one because it's a little more difficult factoring. Again, it's a quadratic. Everything is on one side, so I'm going to rewrite this as 9x squared minus 9x minus 4 equals 0. 9 times -4. Let me give myself a little more room. What in the world? Okay, so 9x squared minus 9x minus 4 equals 0. I multiply here, I get -36. What are the factors of -36 that multiply to give me -36, but then add to give me a -9? -12, +3. Agreed, good. Now when I look at this, guys, my A term is not 1, so I'm going to put the 9 underneath both of these. Do either of them cancel out and simplify real pretty? (12/9) and 3/9. Do either of those simplify to a whole number? No. But you can simplify the fraction. So I can rewrite this as x minus 4/3 and x plus 1/3, correct? So my two parentheses, my two binomials would be 3x minus 4 and 3x plus 1. And when I set them both equal to 0, I get x equals 4/3 and x equals -1/3. If you guys don't know where I got that from, just let me know. But 3x minus 4 equals 0. You move the 4 over, it becomes positive. Divide by 3, you get 4/3. So for my interval notation, my algebraic answer, all right, I have a point at -1/3, a critical point. I have 0 and I have 4/3. What kind of a dot, what kind of circles do I have at both -1/3 and +4/3? Closed, good. And this is started off as a less than problem. So where do I shade when it's less than? In the middle. So when I plug 0 into check, should 0 work? Should it satisfy the inequality? Yes, because I colored over 0. Good. So when I plug that in, guys, look, 9x squared, if I plug 0 in there, it's 0 minus 0. Is -4 less than or equal to 0? Yes, that's a true statement, so we're good. So what is my interval notation? What's the algebraic part of my answer here? How would I write it? Bracket, right? Because it includes, so good, -1/3.
And then comma,
And what goes on the end of that? Perfect, good. Now algebraically, we're done. Graphically, where were my intercepts? At positive what? Positive 4/3, so it's a little more than 1. And -1/3, less than 1. Again, is it a happy parabola or a sad one? Positive or negative? Is it positive or negative? It's positive because the A term is positive. Good. So now, where do I shade when it's less than? When it was greater than, I shaded above the x-axis. Less than, I shade where? Below. So somehow, for your graphic answer, excuse me, the hiccups, you guys need to let me know that the only place that satisfies these values on my parabola would be below the x-axis. And the reason why for that is this. Look at our first one. You guys, look at the ends of a parabola. They go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So our domain, algebraically, we said our domain was from negative infinity to that point right there, -5. And then it started again at 2/3 and went on to infinity. Do you guys see how you're telling me I can use all of these points here and all of these ones here that go on forever, but I cannot use this stuff right here in the middle? This was our union. That's how graphically you're showing me that. When it was our less than, all right, when it was our less than, you're telling me I can only use stuff from -1/3, which is right there, to +4/3, which is right there. I cannot use anything here or here. So that's why graphically you're showing me on your parabola, when it's less than, you're going to shade everything below. It's going to be from this point to the next point. When it's greater than, it's going to be everything above, and it's going to be negative infinity to a point, gap, point to infinity. Does that make sense? People at home, talk to me. Good talk, good talk. All right, your quiz is when, guys?
It's easy, Miss.
Okay, good, good. I like to hear easy. That's good. Our quiz is Wednesday. You guys need to make sure